So we're interrupting my brand new bike build right now for this video for you guys on how I set up and install my custom brake cable setup. So this is less of a tutorial on how to set up a gyro cable setup and more of just me kind of walking through how I set my personal setup up. So the first things first, we got to start with the brake lever, and very simply here we're just going to install it onto the handlebars. I'm not worried a ton about final placement right now, mainly because I don't want to do that until I'm sitting on the bike and know exactly how it's going to feel while I'm riding it. But we got the lever on there about where it's going to go. I'm going to snug it up enough that it doesn't move. And pretty simply now we're ready to get our upper cables set up, but not installed yet. So first thing I'm going to need is, not the first thing actually, but we're going to need cable inner. We're also going to need cable housing, and then there's a couple other bits and pieces that you'll see along the way. But before I move any further, I need to figure out exactly how long this housing is going to be. So I'm going to do that real quick. And to put it simply, I'm just going to use my old bike to figure out how long it needs to be. Be right back. All right, so I got a couple housings cut here. And before I put the housing ends onto these, and before you do this, if you ever do make your own cables up, you want to take a cable inner and just run it through your entire housing just to make sure that it's going to work. Because look, I'm pushing right now and it's not. There we go. You want to make sure that you get it all cleared out, because it's going to be harder to do that once the cable end is on there. And since this might make it even better here, let's put a cable end on while we have the cable inner in there. So now once we clamp down on that with our Park Tool cable cutters and cable clamps, we won't have to worry about it getting stuck in there either. We'll do the same thing for the other side. And this is just ensuring that you don't have frustration later, because if there's one thing that I've learned about when working on bikes, it's that you want to prevent as much frustration as you possibly can. So now we've got one cable housing made up, and we'll do the exact same thing for the others because I cut the bottom ones just now as well. So the next step in the process, after getting my cable housings done, I've got my barrel adjusters on here ready to go into the gyro plate, is to get our inner ready. And this is literally just a 1.5 millimeter inner with the normal barrel end on it. And what I do with this is I fold it in half and then I cut it literally in half. And this doesn't have to be exact. This isn't super precise here. We just need two different pieces. So we want the side with no ends on it, and then the side that has the end on it becomes one of our lower cables. So we'll set that aside for now. And then what we need here is our other little pieces for this setup. So I need my little piece which serves as the cable end that goes into the brake lever, and then the piece that is kind of a guide. This comes from a Snafu Astroglide cable, and I just slide them onto the cable. This one you have to think a little bit about, because depending upon which side it's on, it has this little indent in it you can see for the end of your housing, and if you don't put the right side facing the correct direction, then you'll have it wrong and then it won't seat properly. So this should be correct facing outward for me here, I believe. Yeah, so then from there, the side that little piece I just showed you sits in is the shorter cable. I didn't mention that I made one of these cables longer than the other. They're evenly matched at one end right now, and here we'll try and give it a little background shape, or white background so you can see it. One side is like 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches longer than the other. So we're going to take the shorter side first and put it onto the side with our adapter, guide, whatever you want to call it. Then we slide our other housing onto the other side. This is where it kind of can become a little bit of a pain to hang on to, but that doesn't last very long. So what we're going for here is getting these cables side by side so that the top parts are even and that the bottom parts have the same amount of cable inner coming out. So we can see here that this side is longer than this side. So if we push this side in and pull this side out, it can be a little difficult, but it really doesn't matter a ton because you have so much slack here that it doesn't end up mattering in the end. So the next thing we're going to do is literally just bend the cable in half. A sharp bend on it. I got a slight bend here that we want to get out now. But this sharp bend is where this piece sits, and then you do another sharp bend so that it has somewhere to sit, and I'll focus that much better so you can see it. So here's our sharp 90-degree bend. We need to make another 90-degree bend so this will just stay in place. And the best and easiest way to do that is to force it first and then grab you a set of Park Tool pliers. Make sure it's sitting in the middle, and then you pinch the cable with the pliers just like this. So now we can see that the end is made. This piece sits on the cable housing the way that it's supposed to with that indent. And we can grab our barrel adjuster for our lever here, slide it onto the inner, and push it through the adapter, which I didn't even add. I custom made, this is the Snafu Astroglide piece that I cut the top of and then widened for the Odyssey mono lever, and now we can move back up to the lever and actually install it. And as you can see here, I put the barrel adjuster on the wrong side. We'll fix that before we get up there. Okay, so now all we got to do is take our cable end piece, put it into our lever here, then wrap it around and screw the barrel adjuster into the brake lever. So we'll finish that up at the very end, and you don't have to worry about it if you're actually going to do this for now. But you do want to make sure in doing this that your shorter cable, see if we can get this in a viewable fashion here, that your shorter cable is on the bottom. You can kind of see it here. Shorter cable, this one sticks out way further. You want to make sure that one's on the bottom, because if it's not, you're going to want to swap them. Because the shorter one goes to the closer side and the longer one goes to the longer side. And let's move down to tighten our barrel adjusters. Alright, now that we can clearly see this, we'll take the longer cable, run it down through our gyro plate, tighten the barrel adjuster into our gyro plate, tighten it all the way down. Take our shorter one, do the exact same thing and tighten it all the way down. This is turning into a bit of a tutorial, but you know what? Somebody might follow it, so I'm going to explain it so you can while I'm doing it. There we go. Cables are installed. Everything is as it should be. And most people by this point would have already had the gyro on, but you know, not me, because I'm not to that point yet. But this is a perfect opportunity to shout out my buddy Dustin Reese for hooking it up and selling me this rare steel Odyssey GTX gyro with the screws in it. And that's what we're going to be putting on, but I'm going to give you a little bit better of a view for that. Alright, so all we got to do here is take our stem off, loosen our headset. you guys already know how to do all of that. And then plop our gyro on between the gyro plate and the frame. So loosen that, loosen the headset. Hold on to your fork, because if you don't, it's gonna fall and you're gonna be bummed and you're gonna have a bad time. Next, pull both of these off, gyro plate and stem. Oh yeah. Set that aside and grab our gyro, orientated the way that I want it, and put everything back together. I guess we're doing this in the exact order that you would do it if you were installing everything in sequence, so it does make sense. So at this point, I'm not going to tighten all of this all the way back down, because I want to make sure that the bars are straight before I do that. But now we can move on to our lower cables. I'm not going to tighten all of this stuff up yet, because I want to make sure everything else is put together the way that it needs to be before we lock anything down. I don't want to push or set anything in stone, so we have some room for adjustment if we need it. So now let's move on to the lower cables. So before we get along to putting the cables on, we need to put our London mod on, which is simply a modification that takes it from a single cable guide to a dual cable guide, so that we can use dual lower gyro cables. And normally I wouldn't use this piece and I would put a gyro tab in here, but this time I am going to go with the piece that comes in it. And actually I'm going to flip that so the O Odyssey logo you can see there faces downward. It's about the little details. So let's start this nut, and then we're going to get this as tight as possible. So first thing we're going to do here is screw our barrel adjusters into our gyro tabs. Pretty simple. I doubt I can do them both at the same time. I don't know if I have that kind of coordination. Apparently I do. And wow, do those barrel adjusters stick up really, really far. I'm not sure how I feel about that. It's a lot of travel, but it's less than what we could have. And something's funky with this one, so be right back. We'll get through it. So the barrel adjusters are in, and now I probably should have ran this cable before this point, but you know what? It's a learning process for me too, because it's been a long time since I set up a completely new brake setup. We run our cable down through, and we run it through one of our V-brake noodles that we have here. Get that all the way up to the top, and we might as well grab one of our housings so we can use some of this lubricant that comes out of the V-brake noodle in our housing. And everything is almost good. We run it through our barrel adjuster on the corresponding side. Now we can do the exact same thing on the other side. So first I need to make another cable, and we might as well relocate the camera so you can see this too. Alright, now we're going to repeat the same process once again. I accidentally frayed my cable just now, which is a good teaching point that if you do this while you're feeding anything, cut off the frayed part before you try to feed it through another housing, because if you do that, you're going to have a bad time. V-brake noodle number 2. Cables are installed. Next, we can move back to, where do we want to move from here? I'm going to figure it out, and we'll cut to it. Alright, same angle, we're back. I got a couple things that I want to do here before we move forward. First of all, we want to put the gyro all together on the cable inners So that is all set up and ready to go. We'll get both sides going here while everything is still loose and easy to maneuver, because now all we gotta do is pull on it here, and now everything is set up here so that once it's ready, we can just tighten this down and we'll be good to go. But also, there's a couple things that I do normally to protect like the frame. So like this ribbon here is gonna sit up against the head tube, and it's gonna protect the frame from the brake cable ends scratching the crap out of it, like I know that it will. Then we also have a shoelace here, which is going to tie the V-brake noodles together and keep them in place against the frame so that things don't move around all crazy. Yes. And then we'll do one more in the middle of the frame too. 3, 2, 1, go. There we go. But next, we need to move backward and get our brakes set up so that we can get these cables where they need to be, and then we'll be able to finish it up in the front. So for anyone who's not familiar or hasn't seen my video about my custom brake cable setup with the kink desist brakes, or my custom lower gyro cable setup, what I like to do here, we'll start with the kink desist brake, is I take literally the bolt that comes with it to go into the mount, but another one, and I take a nut that goes with that, and I put that bolt down through the hole in the brake arm and tighten this nut down pretty much as good as you can get it, because you don't want it to go anywhere. Alright, easy enough. This is literally just the bolt that is for a straddle cable hanger or a carrier. If you're not in BMX, it is a bolt that has a hole through it that your cable goes through. You pinch it down, and that's how you use your straddle cable. But what we do with it is we take our brake cable, we run it through the hole one time, we leave it sit up here, then we wrap it around the bolt that we put into the brake arm. As you can see, that tapered bolt leaves a little bit of a gap there. Then you run it back through the hole in the bolt, which is something that you have to use a drill and make bigger, because the hole that is in it from the factory is not big enough. So you got to make it bigger with a drill. And as you can see there, if we do this correctly, it makes a perfect little cable hanger for this bolt. So we don't want to tighten this down all the way yet. We can get it here. We don't want to tighten this down until we put our brake pads on. So what we can do is we can get both sides set up so that they're ready to go. And then once our brake pads are on, we'll be able to just tighten it down. So first, we're going to take our other bolt, and because the kink desist brakes are so offset as far as how the arms sit, you can see this arm is much lower than this one. We put the other side in upside down with the nut on top so that we can have them as close together as possible for our cable and how it sits between the two of them. Alright, that shouldn't move from there. Now we can do the same thing with another straddle cable bolt on the other side. So now everything is set up back here so that we can put our brake pads on with our springs loosened to do it easier, and then do our spring tension and then tighten this down. Actually, we're going to do the spring tension after we get these, because it will help us to get it even better. So let's move backward and put our brake pads on. All right, so we got a little bit of a tight space on the camera angle here, but we're going to install the brake pads, which I have the female variety, which means that the bolt goes into the brake pad, whereas normally the stud sticks out and you put a nut on that, meaning that with the female one we don't have to worry as much about our shoes getting destroyed. Hopefully I'm not too close and too loud on that microphone. And with the brakes not adjusted yet, it makes it so much easier to get things where they need to be and tighten them. Because with the springs adjusted, the brake would be pulling against me right now and just not good. So I do actually want to tighten it though. I'm not going to tighten the spring. I'm just going to tighten it up so that I know that the brake pad and the brake arm is where it's going to be whenever it's done. That seems good. So now we'll go to the other side of the bike here. Sometimes you have to be finicky and tinker with your brake pads to get them perfect. Alright, so we're back up where the brake cable meets the brake arm, and all we got to do now is loop our loop around the bolt, pull it tight, and before we tighten this down all of the way, I'm going to loosen this barrel adjuster just a little bit, because if we tighten this down all the way right now, and then we tighten down our gyro where it was at, it's going to not give us any brake pull whatsoever. We may end up with some stretch later, but that's not what you want to rely on. You want to have some kind of pull, so I just loosened it just a little bit. Now that's pulled as tight as I can get it. We want to make sure that all of the slack is out of up front too, so that when you tighten this down, you don't end up with any surprises that are a bummer. I totally don't know which way tightening is right now. I promise I know what I'm doing. Once we have spring tension, will we have enough? Not even close. So that's why we don't tighten it all the way down, because you want to make sure that you're going to have enough. You're going to have enough pull. One side, I think, done. The cable adjustments there that we need. It comes right off of there if we want it to. That won't happen whenever there's a cable pulling on it. I may push that further once I'm totally done, but for now this is good, and we will do the other side in a time lapse just like we did this side, because it takes a second to get this right, because you want to get it right the first time. You don't want to have to do it again. The next thing that we need to do is adjust our spring tension back here, so let's just move the camera a little bit and refocus. We'll do it live now. Spring tension. This is something that I have several videos about, and it is totally up to your personal preference on what you actually like with spring retention. So this isn't something that I would suggest anything about other than figuring out what you like. So pull that one off. I do know that when you adjust spring tension, you want it to be able to move out as far as possible. And I'll say that right now. Otherwise, check out the videos that I have on it, because they will definitely help you. Just where I wanted it. Now let's do this side. Brake spring tension is complete. Next, we can move back to the front of the bike and tighten our gyro down. We'll see you there. Alright, one of the final steps in this process is to tighten the screws down on the gyro. And before you do that, you want to make sure all of your slack is out in your upper cables, so that you don't have any surprises later. So I think we're good. I think we're ready to tighten. I'm not going to lift up on this at all or anything, because I want the most travel on my brake possible. I want to have as much room as possible, rather, so that I don't have to worry at all about my gyro hitting my gyro plate. So seems like we're getting close here. This side is tightened. Now we'll pull down on this one. Also push it in to make sure that it is getting tight. And I've got to give a giant shout out here, if I haven't already, even if I did, to my buddy Dustin Reese, who saved this new bike build by having this gyro and being willing to sell it to me, and then driving it all the way up here and having a session last night so that I could get this gyro and finish my bike build. And now we're ready for a test pull. They pull evenly, but this side isn't against the actual barrel of the end of the cable. So we're gonna have to figure that out, and I'm gonna have to do some adjusting here. But then after we do that, there's really only one final step, and that is to put the cable ends on the cables and cut the excess off of them. So I'm gonna adjust, and then we'll come back to the finished product. All right, folks, I got my brakes adjusted and feeling just like I want them to. All that's left to do is trim the excess cable off of here and put on my cable ends. I will do one extra step after the fact, but I don't have the zip ties that I need to do it now. And that is all I do, and I really don't know why I do it other than to have something to pull on here, is I put a little zip tie around both of these cables to keep them together, and then with the cable end it keeps them from coming apart. So now let's bend this cable end up and cut it off. Ooh, might be easier to do this side first. But with that, that's pretty much, that's my brake setup. I don't know if anyone finds this useful or intriguing in any way, but that is what I do, and it works for me, and I enjoy it. So let's get these cable ends on here, and we'll call it quits, shall we? So let's see. We've got 4 of these awesome green little cable ends, thanks to Brimstone Bicycles. Eric was insistent that we use the green to match the bike, and he was right, let me tell you. So we'll get all of these on. These protect my frame even more than the little ribbon does. There we go. That is smooth and clean. Oh yeah. Next up, these last 2. Then I'll get those little zip ties another time, and we will call it done here. There we go. That is it. And that is my brake setup. Now it pulls even better because there's not a whole bunch of extra weight on there. That sound of the gyro hitting the barrel adjusters. These brakes are dialed, and I cannot wait to use them. Oh, it's gonna be good, ladies and gentlemen. So, on that note, that's my brake setup, and that is exactly how I do it. From the start to the end, it is done. The brakes on my new bike are ready to rock, and I'm so excited to use them. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you do anything from this setup, please take a picture and send it to me, because I'm always so excited to see them. But on that note, I'm starving, so I'm gonna go eat dinner and then come back and then finish my new bike. So thank you guys for tuning in, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video enough that if you're new here or you haven't yet, you'll hit the subscribe button while you're down below leaving a comment about this video. So thank you again for watching, and goodbye.